not using it.
And I know people in that group and they have certain personality.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Call them adrenaline junkie.
Yeah.
So egos.
So if we,
Okay.
so if we think back to when we're looking at the, you know, how we might engage with different people within the business, you know, so we're looking at, you know, who might sabotage the scenario, or who's going to make the influence the decision, or actually make the pay for the service. So different stakeholders within that business, right? So trying to find it into what Liza is saying.
Yeah.
So could I just ask, when we're thinking about this for ourselves, say we take businesses, if there's thousands of businesses interested and I only need 50, does that make them lower on the influence scale? Or
I would think so.
You know,
yeah.
If you've got heaps
heaps
at your thing,
yeah.
do you put them lower? Or? Like at the end of the day, you still need at least 50, but if there's so much interest.
Yeah, that's right. If they're critical to your success, I would still keep them high because you don't want detractors. And so you have to probably have a strategy. So for example, you've got demand, far outreach and supply. You might then have a disappointed group that can become detractors. You've got to manage them. So I would still keep them in the high influencer group. Yeah. So once I've had a bit of an understanding, where possible with data on what their needs are, where not possible with actual your own data or any other data that you might have about this particular group, just use your instincts on it. That's going to be better than nothing, but make sure you're gathering data over time so that you can use data to validate any of these sort of assumptions. But once I've done that for these guys, I then try and work out what action I need to take in order to engage them. So I know that I have to absolutely enlist this group of people. I have to get them in as supporters, and I have to harness their influence so that they can pull in others along the way, because they're influencers. They're going to have an impact within their own spheres. So I'm going to enlist and harness the influencers. Now, I haven't talked about any of the strategies yet of how I'm going to do that, but that gives me a broad objective to start thinking about. So when you start thinking about your communications, you can think, I have to enlist and harness these people, right? And it's quite nice to keep it top line at this point. You don't want to get into 7 or 8 different strategies at this point. You'll go mad. You need to keep it top line and be really clear. So if you're in the elevator and one of these local leaders was in there, you go, enlist and harness this person. Like I'm going to speak to Vaughan after this. So I do this for each of my groups, okay? And this is always bespoke. This title is new for every grid. This action is new for every grid, and obviously it's based on the data that is unique to each group. You might find that in one of your quadrants there are subgroups. Try and keep it high level at this point is all I can say. If it gets to be too complex, you might actually need a slightly different model that caters to a more complex stakeholder typography, basically, and I've put that in my slide deck. I won't go through it today, but I can show you that separately. Okay, so I'm not going to, we can only see a little bit of that, but our low, high students that are in this quadrant over here, high interest, low power. So we're going to call them our enthusiasts. They're like our cheer squad, right? We know that they want inspiration and engagement. They are really looking to be inspired by the Innovation Expo, by the speakers, by the exhibitors. They're also really wanting career pathways, very different to our influencers who are wanting collaborations. These guys are wanting pathways. They want to see where they can be in the future. And they're wanting community connection, mostly. Not so much about sort of business collaborations. Quite a different communication piece, right? So what we need to do with these guys is that we need to spark their interest and use their enthusiasm to amplify our message. Because we've got a little cheer squad here, we've got to work out how to use them.
Have you found this multifunction formula that you can fit in kind of everyone's case just by one approach, like maybe you combine both of the interest of the.
What do you mean?
Yeah,
Combine these two things?
Like the more functional formula that suits both interest and harness and skip the interest.
Yeah, so I'll talk to you about that next,
Okay.
actually. You've jumped ahead and that's great. So what you always want to do is have consistent communications without doubt. Otherwise your brand looks fragmented. But what you are going to do so you'll have it, so I'm going to call it like an umbrella message, but I'm trying not to use marketing terminology that pops out of my mouth at every opportunity. But if you use sort of some key messages that are very consistent, and then you tweak them slightly to appeal to your different audiences, tweak around the edges, that's when you will be able to make a breakthrough with individual communications.
Okay.
But you don't want to be seeming like you're different things to different people.
Yeah.
That's absolutely critical. Yeah. And I'll go through that in a minute. And I'll show you how you do that with your value proposition. So I know you guys are working on your value proposition at the moment, aren't you? So I'll show you how you can harness that to create a consistent communication umbrella message, and then how you then tweak it. So I won't go through this in great detail, but the example here is for our high influence, low interest group. They're our advocates. If we can win them over, they are our advocates. So we have to absolutely link to the curriculum for these guys. We have to align to their objectives. We have to provide their students with career pathways, so that particularly for academic institutions, they're actually getting an outcome from engagement with us, for example, enrolments.
In Christchurch, you tell one school, the other school's going, you know.
They all come, except for they didn't last year, but they will this year, if I'm honest. And they're also looking for profile and reputation, particularly the academic institutions, international leaders. If we really go into this profile and reputation piece, and that's really important. And then obviously these guys as well. So my sentiment, my action is to actively woo and win these people and promote their involvement. So once I get my international leader on board as a guest speaker, then I'm going to publicise that to everyone I can think of in Christchurch, because that is fantastic. That's great for the international leaders' profile and reputation. It creates career opportunities for them. It aligns with their objectives. Nothing to do with curriculum for them, but that's fine. That makes sense? And then the last one, I'll just show you what I came up with here. So this is our broader community, right? So in the generic model, it was all about monitoring them. But I actually think that we need to raise awareness with our broader community. So these guys will either be our supporters or our detractors. They'll either say, that's a cool event, but it's not for me. But, you know, my nephew's going and that's awesome, or, you know, whoever. Or they'll say, this is a waste of money. We shouldn't be doing that stuff here. We want them to be positive, even if they're not attending. So what we know is that they need some engagement. They need to know that this is an opportunity for everyone in the community to connect, and they need to understand its relevancy to their life, right? If it's not relevant, then they're absolutely going to be a detractor. So what we need to do with these guys, I think, is raise awareness of our relevance and accessibility to all in the community. So this is not a monitor piece. This is an actively raise awareness with this group who could become detractors. So to your point before, got to make sure that we're aware of where it might go wrong, and how do we manage our possible detractors of the future.
So because you can only have this much energy a day.
Yes.
We recommend to possibly spread the interest among all the groups differently. I know there's a priority, but
absolutely,
is it better to just focus on the most important group to tackle down best, rather than kind of
absolutely. If there's, understandably, we don't have all the time in the world. I think it is really important to map it out so that you're aware.
Yeah.
But I also think that there is a prioritization that you have around sort of these guys and then these guys, first and foremost.
Yes.
And then if you've got time and you're able to, then managing the others. But absolutely, you have to prioritize, and you have to give your highest, most important stakeholders your most attention.
So it's possible to just give up.
It is, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And in the complex stakeholder map that's in this slide deck that you'll see, they'll actually talk about dormant stakeholders and then dominant stakeholders, and it helps you map out exactly who are the ones you need to talk to and who are the ones that you can sort of forget about for a little bit. My thinking is that absolutely prioritization is really important, particularly when you're starting, but knowing your stakeholders is actually equally important so that you're not surprised if you find yourself either having an opportunity to engage one of your other groups, knowing how to do it, or second of all, if one of your groups turns into a detractor, you've already done a little bit of work on working out who they are and why they might be important to your business. Yeah.
Can I just ask, just so I'm clear, the influencer enthusiast, that's not necessarily the title for
Yes.
that. You've looked at the group and you've looked at what their things are, and then you come.
Yeah. Yeah. So effectively, you'll have this.
Yeah.
You know, and you come up with everything. Yeah, that's right.
Because you want decision maker to be fully engaged with, rather than who has the right?
Yes.
That's what's good people who's
Power.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. That's exactly right. So this was my map in the end, just so you can see what my map looked like in the end. It's a one pager that I have stuck up in the Smart City office now, which is great. And that is that we have got this sort of group of stakeholders. We know who they are, we know our action, and we know broadly what groups they are in as well. And that just reminds us on a daily basis of who our key stakeholders are. Now, sometimes our stakeholders change. They often change, actually. So you would review that each year, but for the moment, that's pretty stable until something major happens. So, your task. I'm going to get you, while I'm here, to have a go at this of mapping out your stakeholders. We have got some paper, which is not externable, but you know, we'll use them. And I thought I'd just have a go at it. It doesn't have to be exactly accurate. I just want you to have a bit of a go at, first of all, listing your stakeholders and then plotting them on the matrix. That's the first thing to do, 1 and 2. And then you can have a go at the other parts as well. So listing their needs and naming them and those sorts of things.
How long are we doing this one?
Oh, that's good. 10 minutes.
Oh, good. So we'll give you about 5 to 10 minutes for this one. Oh. All right. Sure. I think I'll cover this down. Not that it's in Watch, but just be conscious we've got 2 people online as well. And if you're kind of standing here, I'll just shift it there.
Okay, right, I'll stand there. Yep, no worries, that's easy.
It's great. So if you wish to do, you can pop that on.
Okay. No worries, I have to hook it, that's all good. What I might show them. Let's go through the next section. We just talked about value proposition, what we think that is, I think. Although there is more of a conditional piece that I can do. That's usually what we call that. Decision maintenance. But I so much about it, and I tend to use it to create my value proposition. Isn't it? Yeah, not too bad actually. This has been a Smart City stuff. It's been a really nice little piece of work actually. Trying to work out what the marriage is. I think Grace is she is clear. Nothing. But yeah, good. Oh, I do. Yeah, a few people are all right, no. So she's there to sort of push us and a little bit and which is quite good actually. She's sort of there to sort of try and make us so that's that was good. Will you be the next one?
Yeah, sure do. This will be finished. So.
He's supposed to take him.
I'm not sure on the home stuff.
I've got in my diary. Like, yeah, 60. That's on my diary. Grace and I. Yeah. July.
No, it's
June. Oh, June. 13. No, Saturday. Right? June. No, I think I'm here.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm flying on the 14th. Yeah. So is it on the 14th? Oh, so annoying. It's right. I have got a high school reunion and physical. But just let me make sure I've got the other dates in.
We haven't changed. Everyone.
Exactly. We've got a whole list of names up now so that we can remember who everyone is. It's a bit hard. Yeah, so 13th and so that's not happening again. And then the other one is 6th. Right, I'll see if anyone needs. You know, that's fine. You know, that's fine.
What's the
Enthusiast. That was. Yeah. Yeah, so advocate, influencer, supporter, enthusiast. Yeah, no.
No, I'm sorry, I'm employed by you.
Also, they ask. The other one I was sort of asking is future customer base. Yeah. Like, one day you can extend to another market.
In some ways. In the nearest future, there's a long way off. There you go. That's quite good. They're really good. They pop up. Building power. Okay. How are we going?
Everyone okay online?
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm good.
You're all right, no worries. Just pop something in the chat if you want to ask a question. We can always come back if we don't pick it up straight away.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
Where's the camera? Are they there?
There.
Oh, it's there.
Yes.
Hi.
We're going very old school.
Very good. All right, guys. How did you find starting that process? Good? Relatively simple? I had some interesting questions as I was walking around. One of them was, you know, how detailed do you get in this? And that's a very relevant question because once you start this process, stakeholders are everywhere and it can get very detailed very quickly. And my advice would be try and keep it high level to start with, map out your broad groups, and in your high sort of influence and power quadrant, you can then start to get quite detailed, particularly these guys. That's where you might want to get detailed because they're probably going to wield some influence over the success of your project or business. Yeah. Did anyone have a go at listing any of the needs? of your stakeholders? Not yet, that's fine. You wouldn't have had time. That's your next step, is to have a think. What I would do after this session and when you're at this point is look at your high quadrant in particular, but if you can, all 4 quadrants, and start to list out what you think are the needs of that stakeholder group, and then potentially what your action should be at a high level. It's quite an interesting exercise to do, and I find that you need to marinate on something like this a little bit. So you come up with something and then you sleep on it, a couple of days later you're like, that's not it. You know, this is sort of thinking time. It's not something that you can just sort of solve and it's going to be right. There's no right or wrong answers either, but sometimes you just need to think on it a little bit to get it to where you're most comfortable. Yeah.
Sorry, I missed it. When you say how detailed should be that from it, would you mind?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think it's very easy to get detailed and then get bogged down in the detail. But my recommendation is to broadly map everyone and then get detailed in your high influence and power quadrants. Is right.
Okay, so
to start with, particularly your high highs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do analyze each individual one or as a whole?
As a whole in the quadrant. Yeah. But you might decide in your high quadrant, you might decide to analyze that it's worth analyzing those individually. It depends on your business and those stakeholders.
It's like a final that you could filter.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And there'll be a point where you think this is pointless. I don't need to do this because these guys are actually low interest, you know, they're not going to influence my business. But there will be a group in there that are very influential that you need to include. And so obviously I haven't listed customers in here because our customers at the expo are slightly different. They're attendees, it's the public, it's the interested community. But you would have customers. Another question was about competitors. Competitors can be key stakeholders of yours. You can look at them as potential detractors as well, particularly if you're disrupting a market. So they're probably going to have high influence and power. And they might end up being in your high quadrant. Well, we can talk about that. Yeah. You have to work out how you're going to manage them. It might not be that you're directly communicating with them. This is about stakeholder engagement or management. The communications piece is next. So your strategy, for instance, if you had a highly influential, highly interested competitor that you were worried was going to try and shut you down, then you need to probably separate that stakeholder out from your highly interested and highly influential customer group and have 2 different strategies in managing them. You see how that might work? So you wouldn't group them in one quadrant with actions from one quadrant. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah, cool. All right. All righty. So this is the slightly more, I'm not going to go into it. It's a bit academic, but this is a more complex stakeholder typology that you can use that puts 3 different areas on the grid effectively: power, legitimacy, and urgency, basically. And you can map them in this way. And it helps you work out their importance and their influence, right? I wouldn't recommend doing this unless you've got really complex stakeholders. So talk to me if you want me to go through it separately. I'm very happy to. It's in here. If you feel like you know, if you're in the medical industry or you are dealing in government, you might want to map out this. There's a quite a very academic paper that I've referenced here. It's a hard read, but it's a really good read on how to use this to your advantage over time. Yeah.
Yeah, 2 questions.
Stakeholder obviously fits into 2 categories.
Yeah.
What do you think, like what happens involved?
What can you give me an example?
So because we're doing
Mm-hmm.
car park owners sort of fit into 2. So there will will be some that will be completely
Mm.
uninterested.
Yes.
How
Yep.
do I define?
Yep, I would. So what I did with the previous example was that I moved our interested community and our broader community. Effectively, that's community, that's a bucket, and they're in two different groups. So this is a very broad example, I guess, but I would put your two different car park types of car park owners into two different categories. So you've got category one, you might label them, I don't know, interested car park owners, and then whatever. And you just label them like that. They'll have slightly different characteristics, maybe slightly different business models. That's how you categorize them. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Can I ask a few questions? No,
That's
is
fine.
it the stakeholder topology?
Yeah.
Not a new system to categorize all stakeholders, or is it a more detailed based on what you have on the metrics?
Can you ask me that again? Sorry.
So is this the chart?
Yes.
Not a new system?
Yes, this is a new system.
Okay. Rather than like it's based on a matrix that we did on before.
Yes, that's right. So this is a different way of categorizing your stakeholders if
Right.
you have very complex stakeholders that you're trying to work out who to engage with.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example of where I rarely use this in practice because I find that it gets a bit complex, but it's based, as I said, on the three attributes: power, legitimacy, and urgency of the stakeholder groups. And this is really about their influence on the organisation, the validity of their relationship with the business, and then the time sensitivity of their claim. So it gives you a third thing here. I think it's quite nice to have urgency in your head as well when you're doing a stakeholder matrix, because you might think that somebody has a really urgent claim and you might need to deal with that. But if they don't have power and legitimacy, then, you know, in this model, you wouldn't necessarily deal with them as a priority. Yeah, this is more advanced. Yeah.
More recommended than the previous.
No, not necessarily. I think it's fit for a different purpose. I would say that I would use it if you had complex stakeholders. If you were in, dealing in the medical industry, if you were perhaps dealing with government. So for a really good example here, this is it's not going to make any sense to you, but when I was doing my MBA at UC, we did a study on Cloud Ocean Water, who were the bottling company that was looking for a permit, or had a permit to pull water out of the ground based on because they bought a factory that had an existing permit, and to pull water out of the ground free of charge and then bottle it and sell it overseas, right? And there was a big community uproar about this. And this is where you've got a very complex group of different stakeholders that are needing attention at different times and that are moving quadrants. And in this case, we've got ECAN, we've got iwi, we've got Ngātahu, we've got the public, we've got AWA, which is the activist group, we've got the central government, we've got industry groups, we've got Christchurch City Council, which you would have thought was in line with ECAN but wasn't, and then we've got water as a natural resource. And that doesn't even, there's a couple. And I put in the notes in here exactly, why this was so complex, but you can sort of see that you're dealing with big, different organisations, public sentiment, you're dealing with rules around the RMA, you're dealing with activism, you're dealing with the council and ECAN at loggerheads. So you have got all sorts of different stakeholder groups. And when you look at them, you can see that, different stakeholders are moving from being dormant. For example, the central government came in and had a say on this, and they became a dominant stakeholder all of a sudden. There was no public consultation on this whatsoever. So what happened? There was an activist group that was born out of the public, then became a dangerous stakeholder. So you can see that this would be used. I would only use this when it is a complex situation that you're dealing with that might have some either high profile or quite quite large and powerful stakeholders involved.
So when you were doing this, were you doing this on behalf of Cloud Ocean?
No, I was doing this as part of a university program to look at it. Yeah.
It's like this is more for a research situation that is taken by cheap information.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there is the first one more fixed.
Yes.
First.
Yeah, that's right. Although they will move, but yeah, this is a situation where people's power and legitimacy and urgency is moving.
Yeah.
And this is what you would use to work out who you need to engage with now, and then predicting where you need to engage in the future. So I just think it's good to have in your wheelhouse. It might be something you might use in the future, but the other model is absolutely what you need. You know, it's as legitimate as this model. This is just for a different purpose, but I wanted to show you it just so you could see that this is one of many stakeholder tools that are out there. And I do, if you're interested in it, I would read that paper, that really dry paper, but it's really interesting from a boring perspective. Pardon? Yep.
Have you used the ones at the same time?
Yes, so some work that we were doing was actually consulting, wasn't actually direct work, but with the New Zealand Defence Force, and both, because they were looking at who to engage with, and then when they worked out these quadrant here, I mean these areas here, then match that on the other stakeholder grid.
Last one.
Yes, that's fine.
Because I'm kind of like a person who wants to avoid traps and dangerous as much as possible. Can you just give an example as to the scenario of the dangerous stakeholder kind of stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in this example, that because they're going to be a detractor. You know how I was talking about detractors before? Detractor. So what I mean by that is that AWA is the dangerous stakeholder here. They are a activist group that took Cloud Ocean Water to court and ECAN to court over the resource consent that was granted to Cloud Ocean Water. They got a lot of media attention. They got councillors involved. They got Christchurch City Council to fund their campaign, which is extraordinary when you think about how that actually works. So they all of a sudden were no one. They were like off. No one, you know, they weren't even a group. And AWA came up and became all of a sudden a dangerous to Cloud Ocean Water. This is from the perspective of Cloud Ocean Water. This is their stakeholder salience or importance map. Yeah. So AWA's map would be different. You know, and I'm not saying that they're dangerous. I'm saying to Cloud Ocean Water, they're dangerous. Yeah. I've got very clear opinions on this, but I won't share them right now.
So for those stakeholders, you just choose what you think?
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. It really depends on every situation. I would be managing a dangerous stakeholder in probably two ways in this instance. You're going to have a media presence, and all of a sudden PR is going to be really important to you to manage some of the balance of media attention around here. And then probably I'm going to need to look at, there could be mediation or engagement. I don't know. Depends on the situation, really. Might be complete disengagement. Like, you know, say nothing whatsoever.
Have you actually got into like a extremely loyal, like a majestic case scenario that you like that?
I have.
Either you die or I die. That situation.
Yeah. Interesting, you're not going to believe this, but when I was working in the charity sector in Australia for Cancer Council Australia, there were some extraordinarily difficult stakeholder management processes that needed to go on around funding of donor money into cancer education and support. And there were, without doubt, dangerous stakeholders to be managed there that we had to deal with in that process. And if we didn't deal with them properly, then they would be going to the media and saying that we weren't spending our dollars appropriately. Hugely detrimental to our business, but also quite valid concerns because possibly we weren't communicating well enough. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But at the time I wouldn't have used this map. I didn't know about this map. I just knew about the dangerous stakeholders and how, you know, that I had to manage them. I had a stakeholder grid. But yeah.
How investments out there, the issue with them?
Direct engagement and then communications. Yeah. Yeah, transparency on how opened our books effectively, direct engagement to allay concerns, and then positive communications showing that transparency going forward. So it was 3-pronged. Yeah.
So just real quickly, the measure of legitimacy.
Let's go back. Here we go. So the validity of their relationship with your organisation. So it's always from your perspective.
Yeah. But
you also need to understand if somebody thinks that they're a legitimate stakeholder of yours, you need to work out whether you agree or not. Because if someone thinks they're a legitimate stakeholder and they've got power or they've got urgency, they could quickly become a dangerous stakeholder. Yeah? Yeah. Cool. Alrighty. I'm going to leave that. I'm so excited that you guys were so interested. Okay, now let me just go along here a little bit. So I understand that you guys have been working on your value proposition. Is that right? And you've had a few different tools to develop your value proposition. I'm not going to give you another tool. I did have another tool, but Vaughan was saying that you guys are already almost through. You're going to be handing it in tomorrow. Is that right?
Yes.
Friday. Is tomorrow Friday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next week.
All right. Okay, so what I want to show you, I guess, is I'm going to use an example of a value proposition that I have developed for Smart Cities Innovation Expo. It's actually a positioning statement, if you want to use marketing language, and there's a value proposition in the middle of it. But anyway, I'm going to use that example. I'm not expecting you guys to use that example, that tool, but I'm going to show you how you then take your value proposition and then turn it into communications that are consistent but tailored. Yeah? Okay, so, first of all, features and benefits. Have you guys spoken much about features versus benefits when you look at your products and services? Can you talk to me about what you know about the difference between, I've given you the answer, features and benefits?
Something one there is when someone tells you, cars got 6 cylinders, the response is so what?
Yeah.
And the answer is so what, that's the benefit.
Exactly. That's right.
Goes faster.
Goes faster. Yeah.
The drill example, like the drill feature and the benefits, the whole.
That's right. Exactly. Great. And what's important to you as the customer, it's your need, is to have a hole for some reason.
Think about something that we did around dogs, paintings and games. We're not much there. There'll be a whole lot of ways of framing their paintings and games. This would benefit.
Right. Yes. So when I talk about stakeholder needs, I'm talking about, what their deep needs are that we are trying to work out how to meet. And the way that we meet them is by trying to orient at the benefits of our product and service towards that need, meeting that need, right? So, yeah, great example. Fuel efficiency, zero sugar, experienced team, free entry, benefits, save money, save the planet, better for teeth, better for health. Experienced team might have perspective, productivity, network, free entry, access control, for instance. Very top line examples, but I think you get the point. I was going to get you to do a bit of a task on writing down the features of your product versus the benefits. Have you done that before? I think we should do it. Just quickly, let's have 5 minutes. I want you to write down your top, could be 1 feature, 2 features, the things that, you can list that your product or service does. And then I want you to list out how the feature solves the problem of your ideal customer or audience. Yeah? I hope can my online people hear me all right? Not sure.
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you. I'll give it 5 minutes. What am I allowed to do? Very good. How are we going? Give me another minute or so. Good. One feature, one benefit. This is something, a really important thing for you guys to do. So if you don't finish it today, I really recommend you do it in your own time. You're really clear on those benefits. Sometimes it's a bit hard. So good question to ask is, why is it important? Why is that important?
So what could that
So what? Yeah. 5 whys. So what, who cares? Why me? Is that what it is? So what, who cares? Why me? Yeah.
pretty good sales manager and try to sell something myself?
Yeah. All the tricks. Oh, bye. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to stop there because I'll run out of time. So once you've got your features and benefits, whoops, where's the little thingy gone? I've got to remember the microphone. So the most important thing when you are trying to work out your value is to make sure you understand the different elements that pull your value together, the value of your product or your service. So that's why I'm asking you to do your features and benefits, so that you're really starting to key into what the benefits are for your customer. The next step, obviously, is understanding your ideal audience. And I imagine you've done a bit of work around this already, but your ideal audience really consists of the people who are most likely to want your product or service. And I call them your ideal audience because these are the, you quick wins, I guess, the people most likely to buy or engage. They're not your total audience, but these are the ones you need to focus in on. So who are they, for instance? What are their demographics, age, what's their stage in life, what's their general income, those sorts of things, household income, where do they live? What do they like doing? What do they read? What are their hobbies? Where do they spend their leisure time? All these things are really important. What are their needs? What are their frustrations? And what are their concerns? Do you know them? Have you asked them? Are you making assumptions? This is really important stuff. And do you have different audience groups? And if you do, you've got to name them and create personas around them, right? So you know this, you probably have heard this 100 times. Yeah. So I'm not going to get you to do this little grid, but this is a really nice grid in here that you can use in the slide that sort of helps you nut out these different things. And then in the bottom right-hand corner here, you've got your persona, right? So you're really clear on who you're talking to, and you possibly have different personas, and that's fine. You can have many different personas, not a problem. You just have to work out what their different needs and frustrations are, right? Okay, so these two things, understanding your benefits and understanding your ideal customer, has to happen before you can work out your value, which you guys know potentially. So I'm not going to show you this. That is a model that I use for only because it's a positioning statement. I'm not going to go into it. The example that I have here, though, is what I want to talk to you about. So my ideal audience, this is quite tricky for the Innovation Expo, but because it's everyone. People of all ages in the community, businesses, educational institution, and decision makers who are inspired by innovation. That's a lot, right? But bear with me. Only, this is our point of difference, only the Innovation Expo champions a future full of possibilities forged by innovators. Because we advocate a livable, prosperous, and healthy and resilient future. So that's all council words. We advocate a livable, prosperous, healthy, and resilient future driven by innovation, accelerated by collaboration, and supported widely through participation. Seems like a lot of words, but there's been a lot of debate to get into this positioning statement. And the middle piece is sort of the value proposition, right? I'll give you one more here. This Calibre is a financial and commercial advisory firm just in Christchurch for motivated business owners looking for expert advice and support to achieve their business objectives. Only Calibre can act as your dedicated ally. Because we understand advice is about deep understanding, proven expertise, commitment to quality, and genuinely caring about the success of your business. Once again, the only piece is the value proposition here. So you guys will have your own models and your own tools to come up with your value proposition. That's fine. There are many different ways. I've worked in this industry for over 20 years, maybe 25, maybe 26. And honestly, every agency I've been to has a different way of approaching it. It doesn't matter as long as you get your value proposition down. Whatever works for you is mine. So I've left this here as a tool for you to do later. But let's just put in your mind, I think for now, what you think your value proposition is, your only statement. Because this is where you bring all of your work on the internal workings of your business, all the internal workings on your stakeholder map, and you're making sure that you've got your stakeholder actions mapped out and your stakeholder needs analysis, and then you've done your value proposition. None of that is a communication strategy, and none of that is externally facing. None of those things there that I just showed you should go out into the public. They are internal statements that you're trying to work out where you fit, what your position is, what your value is. The communications piece is where it goes from internal to external, right? And the best way to do that is when we map it against the needs of our stakeholder groups, including our customers. Yeah, does that make sense? Just make sure I haven't missed anything there in my little quick summary. Yes. Okay, great. So I'm talking about this, as I said before, we champion a future for possibilities for by innovators. Okay, so we could have now a slogan or an external tagline or a sentiment that is something like this: the Innovation Expo, where tomorrow begins. That actually fits quite nicely with our positioning statement and our only statement. Doesn't quite capture everything, but not too bad. We could have Innovation Expo, the future is here. Okay, maybe doesn't go to the needs of the target market, but it's not too bad. Certainly doesn't quite talk to the thing that we are differentiating on. Or perhaps it's this: the Innovation Expo, discover a future full of possibilities. It suddenly is talking to the needs of our stakeholder groups, right? It's starting to talk to trying to raise awareness around I guess, a future state and a call to action for people to be involved.
The tagline is kind of like a range of words.
Yep.
Like number.
Yeah, about 6. Yeah. You can use 3 words with full stops in between. I'm just trying to think of an example of that. Yeah, I can't think of one right now. What I was just trying to think of the smart cities one: inspire, share, create. I can't remember, but you know, boom, boom, boom. You can have 3 words that each have a sentiment. That is often used when you're trying to explain your business or service to your target group. The tagline or the slogan or the core essence of your brand that you're trying to communicate has to achieve a purpose. And that purpose is directly linked to how mature your business is. So if it's a really new idea and a really new initiative, first to market, you may need a tagline that's more explanatory of what you do than sort of inspirational and creative. Once you start to get, you might not, your brand name might say it all, you might have another way of raising awareness or explaining your offer to the market. But that is often what businesses do. They have more of an explanatory tagline. This tagline is because what we're trying to do is trying to inspire and raise awareness in the broader community and all of our stakeholders to talk about, to get their minds out of tech with innovation, think more broadly, but as a call to action around the idea of possibilities in Christchurch. You've got career paths, you've got job opportunities, we've got a great ecosystem here. So when you are looking at developing a tagline, you go back to your grid of stakeholder needs. You also look at your ideal target market and your benefits, and then you have a think about what is the direct message that you need to come up with to meet those needs. Yeah. So I would say six or so words would be about as many as you'd want to have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah. It's not easy. Usually you engage a marketing creative to help you with it. Don't think that it's really easy to do. It's not. People have paid fortunes to come up with these things.
What are some ways that you know, still very early stage, you know, say sort of get to that more front market, that sort of thing, and sort of taking this idea of sort of growing it a bit more. How do you go about ways of testing?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So let me just canvass the room. Has everyone got a business name or a brand name for their idea now? Yeah.
Not that I like, but I've got one.
You got one? Okay, that's fine.
Because it doesn't do that.
Yeah, right. Well, interestingly enough, a brand name, so there's 2 things here. We've got a name, and then we've got a slogan or a tagline or whatever. There's so many different things. Strapline, doesn't matter. Slogan, tagline. I call it a tagline. There are 2 different purposes. Your brand name, without doubt, has to be the thing that you are wedded to pretty early on, right? Because that's unlikely to change for some time unless your key targets change or you have a merger or there's a big rebound in future. But everything that you're doing in your marketing communications is trying to build awareness of that brand name. And if you then change it later, you have to then start again and build that awareness again. So be really careful about that piece. Is that consistent with what you've been taught? That's what I would say as a marketing professional. Yeah. When you start communicating externally about with your brand name, you are starting to build awareness and a digital footprint around your brand. And changing it is going to remove some of that equity that you've built and that awareness. You can change it. I've changed many brands, but I tried not to as much as possible. Your tagline can change. Shouldn't change too often, but it absolutely can change because your tagline might be too narrow in focus. It might have been solving the world's IT problems and then you realise that actually we don't do that. We do something else altogether. We've gone into a different market. We're now solving real problems. You know.
But the Lord, maybe I'll pursue the ways we do after that time. I really, they also, you know, we look for they actually started a whole different brand and a complete failed. And then in the end, they just come back to lift the tide. Everybody knew what tide was, before the lift to, okay, it's now a lift to do with the tide. So just an example of how I say that top line, paying down to
It's really important, I think. And a lot of businesses that I work with often have come up with sub-brands or like new brands for different offshoots of their business. And I actually think that unless you are talking to an entirely different market with an entirely different product, a sub-brand is only going to double your marketing costs and sort of dilute your message. So really, if you can have aligned brands, if possible, if you're talking to similar groups, then, you know, I'm in the business of killing sub-brands wherever possible, to be honest. I do it all the time. You do not need a sub-brand. We just need, you know, maybe it's just a heading or it's part of the master brand. So I think, and branding is a whole nother piece, which I haven't prepared stuff on today because I want to talk to you about stakeholder communications, but I'm very happy to give you some tools that I can use that I have around brand naming and slogan development. What I wanted to show you here, I guess, is that once you have your value proposition and you're linking it into your tagline development, so you should be sort of having a think about how your value proposition is represented in a punchy, concise way. Then you have an overarching sentiment or message that you keep consistent for all of your different stakeholder groups, right? That is the overarching message. And then you just tweak the sort of supplementary messages to make sure you're meeting their needs. And I'll give you an example of how that works because it sort of sounds great in theory, but it's difficult to explain. Oh, hang on, let me just talk about this. So this tagline piece that I was talking about is really the emotional hook, the emotional connection that you're trying to get with your ideal clients, right? Or ideal customers. It's the thing that you're linking into their needs or their motivations or their frustrations, right? It's the emotional hook. It needs to be short and punchy, 6 words, 3 separate words, not 4. People can't remember 4 words, 3. Be consistent, be consistent, be consistent, be consistent. Having fragmented different messages actually will detract from all of the work that you're doing. People come to me as a branding person and say, we want to change our brand or change our colours or all the time. And it's because internally they're bored of the green or the red. Great. Get as bored as you can of your own brand. You should see it everywhere and should be consistent. There's no good reason. The only reason to change your brand is if your market has completely changed or there's been something horrible that's happened and you need to divorce yourself from that, from that brand. Be consistent. Consistency is key. Consistency is almost more important than a great brand name. Consistently applying it. Then you can build it out with the benefits and the features. And then you, as I was saying before, you can tweak your messages for different stakeholders and different audience groups. So let me give you an example. So remember this, we had our stakeholder needs and actions here. We've got our stakeholder needs here. We've got our actions here. We've grouped them as an influencer. We've also got these guys here. These guys are high, these are high-low, these guys are advocates, these guys are influencers. I'm just going to give these 2 as an example, right? So we know their needs and we know the action that we want to take. We also know what our value proposition is and we also know what our tagline is. Okay, so when we look at these guys here, the influencers, and we're looking at the Innovation Expo, which has got the tagline, Discover a Future Full of Possibilities, when we're speaking to our businesses, sponsors, for instance, we would then have a tailored message that might say something like, show you're a leader in innovation and invest in the future. That's where the pitch is slightly tweaked. So the top line message is the same, the logo is the same, the key message around here is the same, the description of the features, what happens at the event is the same. But the hook that we're talking to here, show that you're a leader in innovation, join the club. Only the top innovators in our region are sponsors. Are you one of our top innovators? And invest in the future. For exhibitors, it might be showcase your brand to a diverse audience, connect with fellow innovators, and position yourself as a key player in our thriving innovation ecosystem. So once again, going to their needs, tweaking the message slightly to the sponsor message, but it still fits really nicely under our umbrella message here. Yeah. So you would do this with each of your categories of stakeholders. And in the ones that you've got quite detailed stakeholders, I would list them out like I have here. Businesses, there's a subsection of sponsors and exhibitors. Have I lost you? Still got you? Okay, I'll give you another example. These are our wooers and winners, our schools, academic institutions. We know that we need to woo and win them. We know what their needs are. So for schools, the message is energize and inspire your students with new ideas, innovative solutions, and exciting career pathways. Help them discover a future filled with boundless possibility. So it still links to here, but it's tweaked. It's quite different to our message to the sponsors, but it's absolutely consistent. It's on message is what I would say, on brand.
So this description is the rather than the headline.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. Keep this the same.
Right. And
your description of the event. What does the event do? You might highlight slightly different elements, slightly different benefits. But yeah, it's in the nuance of the description. And in the pitch one-on-one with a school, for instance, you're really trying to emphasize this.
Sounds like there's different features that you can the umbrella term that you are selling.
Yeah.
And you just take the attracting feature.
Yep.
Sell to the
right.
line of the company.
That's right, based on their needs. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's right. So the benefit for schools is this career pathways thing, but the benefit for businesses is, you know, the opportunity to collaborate with other innovators. Yeah. And then for the community, this is the broad community, it's quite tricky, but we had a go at it. Seize the opportunity to engage with innovators, see the impact their solutions are having in our lives, and be inspired to join our thriving ecosystem. So that's our broad community segment. So I haven't ignored them, but I'm trying to link into the fact that they need to understand how this is relevant for their lives. So I would do this for each of my key stakeholder groups to create a key message for them that's linked to my overarching tagline or key message. Yeah.
How long should we
Yeah, just so many words out there. ChatGPT is amazing at making things very long. It's also really good at creating sort of a bit of a sense of how you might communicate to a different group that you can then tweak. I would say that about that, if you can hold it in your head, that's about right. People scroll on websites these days. They're, you know, on their phone, primary mechanism. Too much detail, you're going to lose them unless you've got to do serious pitches with government or medical institutions where it's completely different. I would be trying to keep things to short paragraphs. You also you won't do it if it's long. Like you want to be able to come up with some punchy lines. You could literally write this as dot points for yourself. Dot point, dot point, dot. It doesn't have to be a nice sentence. I wrote it as a sentence because I had to sort of pitch it into the innovation team. But if I were you, I'd write them almost as dot points of your key messages for the schools, key messages for the community, key messages for the businesses, the sponsors,
You said to use something like ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Isn't that what that's supposed to make it easier?
Absolutely. If you just use ChatGPT,
I know a lot of people just use ChatGPT and something
absolutely.
without changing the impact. Completely understand.
I think you should use ChatGPT as a way of editing original copy that you've put in, or for getting something, an idea started that you then edit. Yeah, it's a bit like it's see it as someone that you're bouncing an idea off.
It's like Wikipedia. You know, you say the source in the essay, but
Right.
you get a rough idea.
If you're getting a rough idea and you're like, oh, that's the timeline. Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think we'd be stupid to say that you don't use it. I think absolutely use it as a tool, but 100% edit whatever comes out of it, and make sure original content has gone into it. Otherwise you will get generic lists and waffly language and it won't mean anything to anyone. But they're great for, like, you could punch in your business idea and say, come up with 5 taglines, and that might just give you 5 ideas to then whiteboard that you then turn into something else. And I have absolutely done that before, but not one of any of my pieces of work have come from ChatGPT without me using it just as a source of inspiration. Yeah, I don't think be afraid of it, but I think use it as a tool. No worries. Anyway, I should finish this up.
When we went through differentiation as well, right? So, you know, you're just giving sort of generic stuff that anybody can access through ChatGPT. Well, I haven't stand out.
Yeah. And, you know, ChatGPT will give you reams of information. The science is actually in getting into a nice, concise 6 words. That's really challenging to make it really concise. So the more concise you can be, the better. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's right. And then you might change a few words here and there. That's fine, but just make sure it feels like your own and it's reflective of your brand. So
We've done that deep discovery work, you know, first 2 or 3 sort of weeks, right? We carried on with that, but that real deep understanding, you can't replace that. You have a real nuance in your customer's life. ChatGPT, we're flattening it out, same with surveys and stuff, flattening stuff. You're looking for the little bits of revealing information. That's what determines insights and uniqueness.
And off the back of that point you asked me before, how do you test this? You test it in market. You go to the school and you say, or the sponsor, hey, Spark, who we're going to speak with next week, you were a sponsor last year, sure, you're a leader in innovation. I don't know how exactly we'll do it. Probably a phone conversation, presentation will be in there. If that falls flat, rewrite it, try again. Communication always needs to be tweaked. It needs to be responsive to your audience, and you can make all the assumptions you like and you might get it right or you might get it wrong. So there's a real art in that part of it, I guess, in crafting a message, but then you test it from a scientific perspective. And that's where this can also be changed. But your brand, once you've confirmed your brand and you start publicizing it, please try and stick to it as long as you can. Would be my advice. Cool. That is me, I think. For the moment, that was just the examples of them all together, and I might have 4 or 5 of these. I've given you this tool for you to use, which has different stakeholders. Interchange this with customer, 1, 2, 3. That's fine. Value proposition, the book or slogan, so they're linked, remember? That's internal, that's external, and then what your key messages are here. That's it. Guys, sorry, ages. I always do. Thanks, guys.
These final questions.
Yeah, if you sort of go all the way back to the comment you made right at the start, and you said moving into the purpose revolution, and we see a lot of like presentations of people like, okay, you know, it's all about purpose and being really clear about that. What was it like prior to that? You know, like what lessons were you sort of taking from the previous way of doing things, and why was that working? How was the transition?
Sure. It was a shareholder capitalist society where it was all about what was the biggest revenue earner, regardless. And so everything came back to a cost analysis, cost and then revenue analysis. When purpose started to sort of show its face, what actually happened was that consumer behaviour hadn't changed that much actually, and employee behaviour hadn't changed that much. It was just that the broader industry started to recognise that people valued something more than just dollars in the bank. And the way that we started realising that was that the businesses that seemed to have a core purpose about their business, a reason for being that was higher than just making money for their shareholders, seemed to be having better metrics, better retention rates, lower attrition rates, for example. They're getting the best employees, all things being equal, than other businesses. And that's when the studies started to happen to prove the point. So before that, it was all about shareholder value, not stakeholder value. So now we're moving into a state where stakeholder capitalism is really important. So looking at the different needs of your stakeholder groups and managing them, and knowing that, you know, employee concerns are just as valid as those from the boardroom finance committee.
So just following on that, because it takes time for employees and the stakeholders to realize the change in the community. If you are trying to, approve an idea, how long do you think we should wait for until we see we can call this failure and we will adjust some?
I don't know.
Okay, maybe 10 years. Is it good enough? Give enough time to grow.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question.
So what's your instinct, like from your experience? What's your instinct to saying that this is not working, even though this is the time point into the different outlet, direction rather than keep investing in it from your previous?
Well, my previous experience is that businesses don't usually give things enough time to be tested thoroughly. Yeah, and just a lot of time or not time at all. I always think that there's got to be a point where you call a dead duck sort of thing, but dead duck. Like there will be a point in time where something, even though it's a great idea, doesn't appear to be viable because of the commercial realities around it or the community awareness piece. But my experience is that most businesses only give new ideas a very short amount of time to prove themselves, and not enough time to sort of really validate and really iterate the changes, because they've probably got a bias around the outcome. And that's why we see so many startups coming up, particularly now because tech is enhancing and amplifying opportunity. So that's why I think now we see so many startups that are able to leapfrog, because they're able to iterate and then test in market in a more valid way more quickly than a business would. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but if you were kind of started in that process, would you recommend us to go down the path and be more resilient, to see outcome, or just kind of shifted our idea to reduce lost?
I think you should be testing in market, and if it's not resonating in market pretty quickly, I would be changing it slightly or iterating or changing other elements of it quite quickly, definitely. But I think it would be responsive to market.
One last very quick question.
Sorry.
Okay.
There's a whole idea that you mentioned in the expo that government or those important stakeholders, they wanted a profile. Yeah. So my question is specific on schools, like primary schools, older schools. Can you just give me a little bit of guidance on like what are they mostly looking for and how to manage their relationship, because it's relevant to
definitely. So absolutely, we know that schools have, whatever we do has to be aligned to the curriculum. So we have to ensure that there is some sort of alignment with their core curriculum. So whether it's in senior school or primary school, and whatever level that is, it has to be aligned to the curriculum, Number two, there has to be communications to the school that gives the school enough time to make the most of the opportunity presented. So what we found was that last time we didn't give schools enough time to get it in the calendar. They often, and number three was, you know, there is vast differences in availability of resources in different schools, and in order to get engaged with the school, you've got to provide those resources. So actually for us, providing busing for many schools actually was the clincher. In the end, we had it in the calendar, but they couldn't get the students here because they didn't have enough resource to get the students in. So understanding their resource constraints and making it incredibly easy for them. And once you do that, they're in like things, they're always looking for great ideas. Oh, stop talking.
Eliza, look, personally, I found this super valuable, and I think we can all sort of agree that this is a very much compressed masterclass in stakeholder engagement and communication. So look, we have something very small gift.
Thank you.
Appreciation. Thanks for me. Okay, so just wanting to, thanks, Eliza. And you'll be seeing Eliza on the 6th and 13th as well. If you're lucky enough to make it through for the final 8. Unfortunately, I know Eliza's unable to make it to the showcase, but anyway, you'll see Eliza on the 6th. So, look, your challenge, how sort of I see it, would be your value proposition, please, to me by 12 o'clock tomorrow. This is the statement that you would like in the booklet that the attendees at the showcase will see. Okay?
Is this the one that Ben's been asking us for?
Yeah.
Is it sort of meant to align one with the other? Is that the
One with the other?
well? Is it one and the same?
I don't know what Ben has actually sent out, but I heard there was a Vaughan sent out something, then Ben sent out something.
Right, I got some
So this is, yes, this is what will go into the, you can send it to Ben or you can send it to me. It's going into the booklet. We'll be producing the booklets early next week, so please have it to me by Friday.
Just to clarify, you just want us to write a paragraph describing our intention.
Yeah, well, what do you think your value proposition is now that you'd like to go into the booklet?
Yeah, okay.
Cool. Easy.
So just write
Keep testing and developing your thinking. I know we're just about at the point that we're going to flip into pitching, and no doubt you're probably already starting to move there anyway. But look, progress your thinking as much as possible because that's going to inform your pitch. All right. Then you will need to start building out your pitch and practice over the next week, because we've got our last session on, excuse me guys, just down the back, thank you. We've got our last session, which is storytelling. So again, this is about how you present yourself. That's on Tuesday. So you're not going to have too much time there. It's going to be pretty full on. So you're probably best to try and start putting your first draft out of your pitch in terms of the slides and doing some form of practice over the next few days until Tuesday, as well as this other work here. Okay. Thank you. Any questions regarding where we're at and what we need to be focusing on the next few days? Tuesday, 4 o'clock here. Few thank yous online, Eliza.
Thank you.
Everybody's okay?
Thursday, we'll have that session.
Last session is Tuesday next week. Then we're Thursday, this time Thursday, we would have hopefully got most people through their second pitch practice. We're going for 2 pitch practices each, 17 ventures. We'll split you up and Pete will take a group, I'll take a group, then we'll swap over. So we're going for two whacks at it. So you really need to get as close to that 3 minutes as possible. 4 o'clock? Yeah, we're into it. All right. You need to bring your own pitch, your own slide deck on your own computer and pen drive, okay? So we're just running off whatever you bring for now.
In PowerPoint format.
PowerPoint ideally, yeah. I mean, if you want to run off PDF for next week, that's okay, but it needs to be PowerPoint for me eventually. Yeah.
Just a quick question on PowerPoint. Is that widescreen or 4:3?
I think 16 by 4, I think. I'll let you know. Good point.
That's the big one that's screwed. Questions?
All good? Fantastic. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the weekend. All the best, and see you Tuesday. Thank you, everyone online.
Thank you. See ya.
Thanks.